When this happened, I was heading back into town with my buddy Joe after spending the weekend out on a frozen lake, ice fishing and drinking beer. The fish were really biting, too. Joe's SUV was stuffed to the gills with walleye and smallmouth bass. The northerly town of Kapuskasing was buried under a mountain of snow, the worst snowfall since the winter of '97. I lived my entire life in northern Ontario, and I've seen my fair share of snow, but nothing like this. But you learn to expect the unexpected in northern Ontario. We were heading over a steep incline, enjoying a generous backdrop of pine trees painted in freshly fallen snow, when tragedy struck. We watched as two police helicopters landed on this small slice of highway, causing the trickles of traffic to grind to a halt. Not a good sign. This highway was the only road home. We later learned that a newlywed couple had collided with a transport truck, killing both the husband and wife. We were forced to turn around and head back over the hill, where we found ourselves driving through a modest-sized hamlet consisting of one stop sign, a gas station, a motel, a restaurant, and a small smattering of wartime houses. All you could see was the pointed rooftops. The houses were completely submerged in snow. This was an incredible sight, something you only see this far up north, and even then, this was rare. Joe didn't want to stick around waiting a good 12 hours for the roads to clear. He had a wife and kids to get home to, so we pulled over, wondering what our next move would be. Joe had that look in his eye, the look he gets when he's about to do something dangerous or stupid, or worse yet, both. I know this look well. Hang tight, he said, and hold on. We turned onto a crude version of a road, the kind designated for snowmobiles, with stop signs standing a mere 3 feet tall. The roads were extremely narrow. Snowbanks as high as trees were towering over us like large looming walls of white. If anything were to approach, we'd have nowhere to go. There wasn't enough room to turn around. I was becoming increasingly uneasy. This is how people get hurt, or worse. Are you sure this is safe, I asked, hating the sound of my voice. Joe ignored me or simply didn't hear me. He was busy white-knuckling the minivan through the snow-tunneled trail, with the glare of the setting sun behind us the entire time. We drove for 15 minutes, knifing our way along the icy road, which was bumpier than a wooden roller coaster. It was obvious that we shouldn't be here, and the impending darkness didn't improve my mood one bit either. I had a bad feeling about this. Joe stopped the van. "What's up?" I asked, not trusting the look on his face. Joe didn't answer. I could see that his mind was at work assessing the direness of our situation. "I gotta turn this thing around somehow," he finally said. I couldn't see how this was possible because we were sandwiched in between two colossal snowbanks. Something flickered inside Joe's dark eyes. "What's that up ahead?" he asked, flashing on the high beams. "I think it's a road." It was. We edged a bit further, stopping at this makeshift road. There was no signs or road markings to be seen. Nothing. In fact, this road looked worse than the one that we were on. "Let's see where it goes," Joe said, cranking the wheel. As the minivan lumbered down the unmarked road, an ominous feeling swept over me. It was impossible to ignore. We were in trouble. There was no denying it. We were completely off the grid. Not even Google Maps could save us now. There was only one way to go, straight. The road was leading us into a dark forest, and when you're this far north, that's never a good idea, especially at night. That's when the wolves come out. It was looking to be a moonless night, which didn't help us one bit. Joe's hands were quivering as he clenched the wheel, keeping us from skidding into the towering snowbank. He kept assuring me we'd be all right, but I've heard that one before. Joe slammed on the brakes. "You see that?" He pointed. "Over there." I squinted my eyes. "Look," he said. "Fire." Deep into the forest, I spotted a small flickering flame, dancing blue and orange and yellow and wild. Probably a campfire. Just then, a strange, disturbing sound crackled through the night like a howling wolf. "You hear that?" he asked. The animal cried out again. It was the loneliest howl I'd ever heard. There it goes again. It sounded like a wolf, except it didn't sound like any wolf I'd ever heard before, and I'd heard plenty. Whatever it was dangerously close. "Wolf," I said nervously, but not really believing it. As soon as those words left my mouth, a pair of glowing red eyes appeared out of nowhere. Joe stopped the car and killed the lights. "Be still," he said. I did just that. I sat motionless beside him in the car, but my hands were shaking. Those laser red eyes were approaching at an impossible speed. "Reach back and grab the gun," Joe whispered. I tried, but it was just out of reach. The guns were on his side, closer to the back. Those glowing eyes flashed on and off, and for a moment everything was still. Then out of nowhere, the beast lunged onto the hood of the van. "Ah!" we screamed in unison. This thing was huge, unlike any animal I'd ever seen. It looked like an overgrown German shepherd, except it was standing on its hind legs, like a human. It was snarling at us, making ungodly noises and thrashing about. This creature was long and gangly, frothing from the mouth, clearly rabid. "Dogman," Joe said, clearly astonished. "I don't believe it." Joe started the car and gunned it, looking to run this thing over and speed away, but the wheels were caught on the ice. Without warning, this beast leapt off the hood and started scratching at my door. Its claws were like daggers, tearing the door from its hinges. It smashed through the windshield, shattering it into a million pieces. With its dog-like face twisted in rage, the thing took a swipe at me. Its long, toothy claws just inches from ripping my eyeballs from their sockets. The minivan shook and the cooler of dead fish flipped over. The smell was atrocious, but clearly the dogman disagreed. Before it could rip my throat apart with its curvy claws, the creature turned from me and trampled to the back of the van, where it grabbed and started to eat the fish. Its muzzle turned blood red. Watching it lick the fish guts from its paws was sickening. This isn't how I wanted to die. The dogman's razor-sharp teeth were on full display. The insidious brute seemed hell-bent on killing us both. It seemed that we were, in fact, to be the main course. It took a step towards us while it was licking its face. I gave Joe a look that said, "Nice knowing you, pal," when out of nowhere an ear-ringing blast struck the creature in the shoulder. The thing screamed in protest. Then came another shot. This one hit the beast square in the chest. Blood spilled out like red wine across the interior of the minivan. "Someone's shooting it," Joe proclaimed. 3 more shots rang out. The creature snarled, wiped its face, and then attacked. Bang! The shot went wide, but it was enough to send the beast scurrying back into the woods. "Holy hell," Joe said in a shaky voice. Without a second thought, he pulled his seat back as far as it would go and shimmied his way back to the van to grab a gun. "We're going to need this." All of a sudden, it was freezing. With the vehicle's engine off and the windshield busted out, it was like an igloo inside the van. "It's getting cold in here, eh?" I said, shaking uncontrollably with a large plume of steam coming out of my face. I was in shock. I had no idea what this thing was, but it damn near killed me. The scene inside the minivan was something out of a horror movie. The smell was even worse. I tried opening the door, but it wouldn't budge. Joe tried his door with the same result. We were stuck. I'd sliced myself to shreds before I got halfway through my windshield, and Joe's door had a bullet hole where the handle should be. We had to escape through the back. Blood, guts, fish bones, and all. It was gruesome, but we did it. Once outside, I scanned the area for the dogman creature that almost killed us, but it was nowhere to be seen. When I looked over, Joe had his shotgun aimed at a speck of light approaching us from straight ahead. It was a car. Within minutes, we were greeted by a Volkswagen microbus. It stopped directly in front of us. The driver got out and ran towards us carrying a sniper rifle, wearing an ammunition belt. He spoke fast and with purpose, checking his surroundings while doing so. "You saw it? You did, didn't you? Excellent. Which way did it go?" This guy made Clint Eastwood look like a Boy Scout. I honestly thought he was going to kill us. He frowned as he surveyed the scene, and then he shrugged. "I suppose you'll be needing my help." He ran back to the bus and opened the hatch, exposing an array of military-style weapons, the likes I'd only seen in the movies. "Holy shit," Joe said, clearly impressed. I didn't say a word. I was still unsure of what to make of this heavily armed, red-headed stranger who literally just appeared out of nowhere to save our lives. But it seemed that we had no other choice. Whoever he was, he drove us back to his cottage, all the while telling us all about the history of this dogman creature. He told us some pretty tall tales. His name was Patrick. Apparently, he's a dogman hunter. He says he's never been able to capture one, but claims to have seen 4 or 5, wounding 2 of them. Pesky bastards, he said, hard to kill. He'd been hunting the one that attacked us for weeks. He said that it had been mutilating deer and coyotes as well as cats and dogs all winter long, leaving their remains scattered along sides of roads and in people's backyards. The locals were starting to panic. Joe and I texted home, then we stayed up all night talking about Dogman. I'm having a hard time coming to grips with all this, seeing as how I almost died at the hands of one. Joe, on the other hand, was enthralled. The next day, we drove back to the minivan to inspect the damage. When we arrived, the van was completely dismantled and destroyed. Everything inside had been ravaged and plundered through. "This isn't right," Patrick said. "There has to be an explanation." We scanned the surrounding area for over an hour and came up empty-handed. A fresh blanket of snow had fallen overnight, making track finding near impossible. The disappointment on Patrick's face was palpable. Reluctantly, we hopped back into his microbus and he drove us home with our tail between our legs, where we arrived a day late and short one minivan. We stayed in touch with Patrick going forward. Joe, who comes from a long line of seasoned hunters, was intrigued by this Dogman creature. Naturally, I was skeptical. I'm fairly certain that this beast meant to eat me. The last thing I wanted to do was volunteer to go searching for it. Yet, unbeknownst to me, this was the making of a team of hunters. Dogman hunters. Still amidst all the excitement, a feeling of trepidation had stolen over me. There was a lesson to be learned from all this. A lesson that seemed to be lost on my gun-toting counterparts. Some roads are best untraveled, especially in northern Ontario, where anything can happen, and usually does.